Before we dive into our story, a quick note from us at Woo English. Our journey through stories is not just about exploring fascinating tales, but also about enhancing your English learning experience. Through clear and simple sentences, we aim to make this journey as enriching and enjoyable as possible for you. Your engagement means the world to us, so if you find value in our storytelling, please don't hesitate to press the like button to reward our efforts. We'd love to hear your thoughts and comments too. They encourage us to bring even more captivating stories to you. So, sit back, relax, and let's embark on this storytelling adventure together. Chapter 1: Early Beginnings. In the heart of Italy, in a small, vibrant town called Predappio, a child named Benito Mussolini was born into a world of simplicity and struggle on July 29, 1883. His father, Alessandro, was a blacksmith and a fervent socialist who named his son after Benito Juarez, a famous Mexican leader who fought for freedom. His mother, Rosa, was a kind-hearted schoolteacher who believed in the power of education. The contrast between his parents' professions, one working with the iron and fire, the other nurturing young minds, painted the early canvas of Benito's life with the themes of strength and intellect. Predappio was a town of modest means, surrounded by the rolling hills and lush landscapes of Emilia-Romagna. Life here was straightforward but challenging, with most families, including the Mussolinis, living off the land. In this setting, young Benito grew up understanding the value of hard work and the importance of community. However, life was not just about labor. It was also about the stories told under the starlit sky, tales of heroes and history, which filled Benito's imagination with dreams bigger than the fields that surrounded him. Alessandro, with his passionate beliefs, often spoke of justice and the need for change in Italy, a country fragmented by its past and struggling with poverty and inequality. These discussions at the dinner table were Benito's first lessons in politics and ideology. Rosa, on the other hand, instilled in him the love for literature and the arts, teaching him that knowledge was the key to unlocking a world beyond the confines of Predappio. School for Benito was a mix of challenges and revelations. He was quick to learn but restless, always more interested in history and philosophy than in arithmetic or science. His teachers saw a bright but turbulent spirit in him, a boy who could achieve greatness or court disaster. Benito's school days were marked by an eagerness to stand out, often leading him into conflicts with both classmates and teachers. Yet it was this fiery nature that also drove him to excel, to prove himself capable of overcoming the limitations of his humble beginnings. The Italy of Benito's youth was a nation in the throes of transformation. After years of division, it had only recently been unified, but the promise of unity did not immediately bring prosperity or peace. The North and South were divided by economic and cultural gulfs, and many, like the Mussolinis, were caught in the middle, yearning for a better life. In the fields, factories, and bustling markets, there was talk of a new Italy, one that could rise to the glory of its ancient past, but the path to such a future was fraught with uncertainty. It was against this backdrop that Benito's character was forged. From his father, he learned to question authority and to dream of social change. From his mother, he inherited a love for Italy's rich cultural heritage and the belief in the transformative power of education. And from his surroundings, he absorbed the restlessness of a nation on the cusp of change, eager to define its place in the modern world. As Benito moved into adolescence, the tales of heroes and the debates at the dinner table began to take root in his own ambitions. He saw himself as a protagonist in Italy's story, someone who could bridge the divides that fragmented his country. The fields of Predappio, the classrooms where he both learned and rebelled, and the discussions that filled his home. All were the early chapters of a life that would leave an indelible mark on Italy and the world. Yet, for all the dreams that stirred in him, Benito remained a son of Predapio, grounded in the realities of his time and place. The challenges his family faced, the poverty that gripped his country, and the injustices that stirred his father's anger. These were the forces that shaped him, even as he began to imagine a different future. In these early beginnings lay the complexities of a man who would become a figure of immense power and controversy, a reflection of the contradictions of Italy itself. The sunsets over Predapio were breathtaking, painting the sky with hues of gold and crimson as day gave way to night. For young Benito, they were a daily reminder of the world's beauty and its impermanence, of the greatness that lay beyond the horizon and the fleeting nature of life. As he stood watching the sun dip below the hills, he felt a stirring within, a desire to leave behind a legacy that would outlast the fading light. The journey ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but as the stars began to twinkle in the twilight sky, the dreams of a young boy from Predapio seemed as limitless as the universe itself. In this chapter of his life, we see the blend of determination and idealism, of ambition and youthful rebellion that defined Benito Mussolini. It was a beginning marked not by grandeur, but by the simple, profound experiences of family, education, and the landscape of Italy. Elements that, when woven together, created the tapestry of a life that would forever change the course of history. Chapter 2: The Firebrand Journalist. As Benito Mussolini transitioned from the spirited youth of Predapio to the bustling life of the city, his dreams and ambitions began to take a clearer shape. The fields and sunsets of his childhood were replaced by the clatter of the printing press and the scent of ink on paper. Mussolini found his calling in journalism, a profession that allowed him to wield the power of words to stir hearts and challenge minds. In the early 20th century, Italy was a nation of fervent discussions and political turmoil. Newspapers were not just sources of information, but were the very battlegrounds where ideologies clashed and futures were debated. Mussolini, with his sharp intellect and relentless drive, plunged into this world with the zeal of a warrior. He became a journalist, and not just any journalist, but a firebrand, one who sparks change through passion and determination. Mussolini's early career in journalism was marked by his fierce advocacy for socialism. He saw it as the means to fight the injustices that plagued Italian society, the poverty and division he had witnessed firsthand. His articles were fiery, calling for revolution, advocating for the rights of workers, and criticizing the government for its failures. Mussolini's writing was compelling, not merely for its content, but for its style, bold, direct, and unapologetic. He had a gift for making complex ideas accessible, for speaking to the heart of the common man and woman. As he rose through the ranks of journalism, Mussolini became the editor of several socialist newspapers. His reputation grew, not just in Italy, but internationally. He was a man of ideas, and his ideas were spreading like wildfire. However, Mussolini's journey was not without its challenges. His outspoken nature and radical views often put him at odds with authorities and even fellow socialists. He was a man who thrived on controversy, believing that it was only through conflict that true change could be achieved. The turning point in Mussolini's ideological journey came with the outbreak of World War I. The war divided Italy and the socialist movement. Mussolini, once a staunch opponent of military conflict, began to see the war as an opportunity for national renewal, a way to unite Italy and propel it onto the world stage. This shift in perspective led to a dramatic break from the socialist movement. Mussolini's new vision was for a nationalist, revolutionary Italy, one that could rise above the divisions of class and region to achieve greatness. Mussolini's transition from socialism to nationalism was reflected in his journalism. He founded a new newspaper, Il Popolo d'Italia, which became the mouthpiece for his evolving ideas. Here, he championed the cause of Italian intervention in the war, arguing that it was a necessary step towards the nation's rebirth. Mussolini's articles were persuasive, blending his deep love for Italy with a call to arms for the future of the country. He wrote not just as a journalist but as a leader, someone who sought to guide Italy through its moment of crisis. Through Il Popolo d'Italia, Mussolini began to gather a following. His words resonated with those who felt disillusioned by Italy's state, who longed for unity, strength, and action. Mussolini's ability to connect with his readers, to articulate their fears and hopes, was the foundation of his rise to power. Journalism was the tool that allowed him to reach out, to inspire, and to mobilize. Mussolini's career as a firebrand journalist was a testament to the power of words. He understood that to change the world, one must first change how people think and feel. His articles, speeches, and editorials were not just commentary. They were calls to action. Mussolini did not merely report on events. He shaped them with his narrative, crafting a vision of Italy that would galvanize a nation. Yet, Mussolini's journey in journalism also revealed the dangers of rhetoric unchecked by conscience. His shift from advocating for peace to promoting war, from championing the working class to pursuing aggressive nationalism, showed how ideas could be both a force for unity and a source of division. Mussolini's legacy as a journalist is complex, marked by both his undeniable skill as a communicator and the contentious path he chose to follow. As we reflect on Mussolini's time as a firebrand journalist, we see a chapter in his life that is both illuminating and cautionary. It teaches us about the impact one individual can have on the course of history, about the power of words to inspire, but also to mislead. Mussolini's story is a reminder that while the pen can be mightier than the sword, it must be wielded with care and responsibility, for its consequences can shape the destiny of nations. In this chapter of Mussolini's life, we witness the transformation of a man from a passionate advocate for the underdog to a figure who sought to redefine Italy on his own terms. It is a journey that captivates and warns, inviting us to ponder the complex relationship between power, ideology, and the art of communication. Through his rise in journalism, Mussolini left an indelible mark on Italian society and the world, a mark that continues to provoke debate and reflection on the forces that drive history forward. Chapter 3: The Birth of Fascism. After the turmoil of World War I, Italy found itself in a state of unrest. The war had promised much, but delivered little. People across the country were disillusioned, feeling that their sacrifices had been in vain. It was a time of economic hardship, social upheaval, and political instability. In the midst of this chaos, Benito Mussolini, once a fiery journalist, saw an opportunity to turn his visions into reality. This chapter in history marks the rise of fascism and Mussolini's ascent to power, a period that would forever alter the course of Italy. In 1919, Mussolini founded the Fascist Party. Fascism, a term derived from the Latin word fascis, meaning a bundle of rods, symbolized strength through unity. Mussolini believed that only through total unity could Italy overcome its weaknesses and achieve greatness. The party's ideals were built around nationalism, the belief in a strong government, and the idea that the state was more important than the individual. These principles, Mussolini argued, were essential for revitalizing Italy and restoring its status as a powerful nation. Mussolini's leadership was charismatic and dynamic. He was a master of public speaking, capable of captivating his audience with his oratory. His speeches were powerful, filled with passion and a vision for a new Italy. Mussolini presented himself as the man who could lead Italy out of chaos and into a brighter future. His message resonated with many Italians who were tired of the existing political order and yearned for change. The early days of the fascist movement were marked by aggression and conflict. Mussolini's black shirts, as his followers were known, clashed with opponents in the streets. These confrontations were often violent, a sign of the deep divisions within Italian society. Mussolini, however, portrayed these struggles as necessary for the birth of the new Italy he envisioned. He argued that from the ashes of the old, a stronger, unified nation would emerge. As the fascist party grew in strength and numbers, it began to attract a wide range of supporters, from war veterans and the middle class to industrialists and landowners. Mussolini's promise of stability, order, and national revival appealed to those who feared the rise of socialism and the threat of social unrest. His ability to unite various segments of society under the fascist banner was a testament to his political skill and the allure of his message. In 1922, Mussolini's moment came. The March on Rome, a mass demonstration by fascist supporters, was the culmination of years of growing influence and power. Mussolini and his black shirts threatened to overthrow the government, unless Mussolini was given the power to form a new government. Faced with the prospect of civil war, the king appointed Mussolini as Prime Minister of Italy. It was a pivotal moment, marking the beginning of fascist rule in Italy. As Prime Minister, Mussolini wasted no time in implementing his vision. He established a dictatorship, gradually dismantling the democratic institutions of Italy and replacing them with a one-party state. Mussolini's rule was characterized by strict control over the media, suppression of political opposition, and the promotion of fascist ideology through propaganda. He sought to transform Italian society, economy, and culture, aligning them with fascist principles. Despite the authoritarian nature of Mussolini's regime, many Italians initially supported him. They were drawn to his promises of order, discipline, and national pride. Mussolini's efforts to modernize the economy, his public works projects, and his attempts to increase Italy's influence abroad were seen by some as evidence of his commitment to rebuilding Italy. His leadership style, combining charisma with an iron will, kept him in power and maintained his popularity among a significant portion of the Italian population. The birth of fascism under Mussolini was a dramatic chapter in Italy's history. It was a period marked by a radical shift in political ideology, the rise of a charismatic leader, and the transformation of a nation's identity. Mussolini's journey from journalist to the founder of the fascist party and ruler of Italy is a testament to the power of ambition, the allure of ideology, and the profound impact of leadership on the course of history. Yet, the story of fascism's rise is also a cautionary tale. It shows how societal divisions, economic hardship, and political instability can create fertile ground for authoritarianism. Mussolini's ability to seize power and reshape Italy reminds us of the importance of vigilance in preserving democratic values and institutions. As we reflect on this chapter of Mussolini's life and the birth of fascism, we are reminded of the complexities of history. Mussolini's leadership and the fascist movement left a lasting mark on Italy, one that continues to be studied and debated. The legacy of this period is a reminder of the enduring influence of charismatic leaders and the impact of political ideologies on the lives of ordinary people. In the end, the story of fascism's rise under Mussolini is not just a tale of one man's ambition or a single nation's struggle. It is a chapter in the broader narrative of the 20th century, a century shaped by the clash of ideologies, the quest for power, and the search for identity. As we turn the pages of history, we gain insights into the forces that have shaped our world and the lessons that the past can teach us about the challenges and possibilities of the future. Chapter 4: The March on Rome. The year 1922 marked a turning point in Italy's history, a moment when the course of the nation took a dramatic turn. This was the year of the March on Rome, an event that would forever change Italy and the life of Benito Mussolini. It was a bold move, one that showcased Mussolini's audacity and his ability to seize the moment. Italy, at this time, was a nation in turmoil. The end of World War I had left the country in a state of economic hardship and political instability. People were looking for a leader, someone who could restore order and bring about change. Mussolini, with his charismatic leadership and his vision for a new Italy, positioned himself as that leader. The March on Rome was his gamble, a dramatic bid for power that would either make or break him. The idea of the march began to take shape in the minds of Mussolini and his followers, the fascists. It was to be a show of strength, a demonstration of their determination to take control and lead Italy out of chaos. Mussolini's message to his followers was clear. It was time to act, to make their vision for Italy a reality. As the day of the march approached, excitement and tension filled the air. Fascist supporters, known as blackshirts, began to gather from all corners of Italy. They were men and women, young and old, united by their belief in Mussolini and their hope for a better future. They prepared to march on Rome, the capital of Italy, to demand that Mussolini be given the power to form a government. The march itself was a dramatic spectacle. Thousands of black shirts, dressed in their uniform, moved towards Rome in a disciplined and organized manner. They traveled by foot, by train, and by truck, their numbers growing as they advanced. The people of Italy watched with a mix of fear, anticipation, and curiosity. The march was a bold statement, a physical manifestation of the fascists' desire for power. As the fascists neared Rome, the government faced a crucial decision. They could order the army to stop the marchers, a move that could lead to violence and bloodshed. Or they could negotiate, try to find a peaceful solution to the crisis. The uncertainty and division within the government played into Mussolini's hands. He had gambled on the government's reluctance to use force, and it seemed his gamble was paying off. In a dramatic turn of events, the King of Italy, Victor Emmanuel III, decided not to declare martial law, and instead invited Mussolini to form a government. It was a stunning victory for Mussolini and the fascists. Without having to resort to violence, they had achieved their goal. Mussolini was appointed Prime Minister of Italy, and the march was heralded as a triumph. The March on Rome was not just a political maneuver, it was a masterstroke of propaganda. Mussolini and the fascists used the march to project an image of strength, unity, and inevitability. They portrayed themselves as the saviors of Italy, the only ones capable of restoring order and leading the nation to greatness. The march solidified Mussolini's position as a leader and marked the beginning of fascist rule in Italy. For Mussolini, the March on Rome was the culmination of years of ambition and struggle. It was the moment when he rose from being a journalist and a politician to become the ruler of Italy. The march demonstrated his political skill, his ability to inspire and mobilize his followers, and his readiness to seize power when the opportunity arose. The consequences of the March on Rome were far-reaching. It marked the end of democratic governance in Italy and the start of a dictatorship that would last for over 2 decades. Mussolini's rise to power through the march set the stage for the implementation of fascist policies and the transformation of Italian society. The March on Rome is a pivotal chapter in the story of Mussolini and Italy. It is a tale of ambition, risk, and the quest for power. It shows how a determined leader, backed by a movement of passionate supporters, can change the course of history. The march is a reminder of the allure of charismatic leadership and the impact of political action. It is a dramatic episode that captures the complexity of Mussolini's character and the turbulent times in which he lived. As we reflect on the March on Rome, we are reminded of the importance of political engagement and the consequences of our choices. Mussolini's ascent to power through the march is a lesson in the dynamics of leadership and the fragile nature of democracy. It teaches us about the forces that can shape nations and the enduring influence of historical events on our collective memory. Chapter 5: Consolidating Power. In the aftermath of the March on Rome, Benito Mussolini found himself at the helm of Italy. However, being named Prime Minister was only the beginning. What followed was a series of strategic moves to consolidate his power, ensuring that he, and he alone, would dictate Italy's future. This chapter in Mussolini's story is about how he transformed Italy from a fragile democracy into a tightly controlled dictatorship. Mussolini's first task was to ensure that all paths led to him. He understood that control of the media was crucial. Newspapers, radio broadcasts, and later cinema were all harnessed to sing praises of the fascist regime and its leader. Mussolini, with his background in journalism, knew exactly how to craft a message. He was often portrayed as a heroic figure, an indispensable man who was the embodiment of Italy itself. This wasn't just politics, it was theatre, with Mussolini as the star. But propaganda alone wasn't enough. Mussolini needed to ensure that no one could legally oppose him. Step by step, he dismantled the democratic institutions of Italy. He introduced laws that made it difficult for opposition parties to function, let alone challenge his authority. The Acabo Law, for example, was a clever piece of legislation that guaranteed a 2/3 majority in the parliament to the party that received the highest percentage of votes. Since Mussolini's party was the most popular, this law ensured his dominance over Italian politics. Mussolini also worked to gain the support of the Catholic Church, a powerful institution in Italy. The Lateran Treaty of 1929 was a masterstroke in this regard. It resolved long-standing disputes between the Italian state and the Vatican, making Vatican City a sovereign nation. In return, the Catholic Church recognized the legitimacy of the Italian state and, by extension, Mussolini's rule. This agreement significantly bolstered Mussolini's position among the Italian people, many of whom were devout Catholics. Another tactic Mussolini used to consolidate his power was the creation of fascist organizations that infiltrated every aspect of Italian life. From youth groups to worker unions, all were brought under the fascist umbrella. These organizations served not only to spread fascist ideology, but also to monitor and report any opposition. Mussolini's message was clear. Fascism was not just a political choice, it was a way of life. Under Mussolini's rule, Italy underwent significant changes. Infrastructure projects were launched across the country, including the draining of marshes and the construction of new roads and buildings. These projects were meant to modernize Italy, but also served as propaganda tools, proof of the regime's ability to transform the country. However, Mussolini's consolidation of power had a dark side. The regime did not tolerate opposition. The Ovra, Mussolini's secret police, monitored the population for any signs of dissent. Those who opposed Mussolini or his policies were often silenced, imprisoned, or worse. The fascist motto, "Mussolini is always right," was not just a slogan, it was a reality enforced with an iron fist. As Mussolini solidified his control, Italy became a one-party state. The transformation was so complete that by the mid-1930s, Mussolini could rightly claim that he had absolute control over Italy. He famously boasted, "Everything within the state, nothing outside the state, nothing against the state." This statement encapsulated the essence of Mussolini's Italy, a nation where the state, under Mussolini's leadership, was supreme. The consolidation of Mussolini's power is a testament to his political skill and understanding of the Italian psyche. He presented himself as the man who could restore Italy's pride and make the nation great again. Many Italians, tired of political instability and economic hardship, were willing to trade their freedoms for the promise of a stronger, more unified Italy. Yet, the price of Mussolini's ambition was high. The freedoms that had been hard won in the years following Italy's unification were eroded under his rule. The press was censored, political opposition was crushed, and the Italian people were subjected to constant propaganda. Mussolini's Italy was a nation of great achievements, but also of great repression. The story of Mussolini's consolidation of power is a dramatic chapter in the history of Italy. It shows how a charismatic leader, armed with a clear vision and ruthless determination, can change the course of a nation. It also serves as a cautionary tale about the fragility of democracy and the dangers of authoritarianism. Mussolini's tactics for solidifying control were effective, but at a significant cost to Italian society. His legacy is complex, marked by both development and dictatorship. As we reflect on this period, we are reminded of the importance of vigilance in preserving democratic values and the need to balance strong leadership with the safeguards of liberty and justice. In the end, Mussolini's story is not just about the rise of a leader or the transformation of a country. It is about the enduring struggle between power and freedom, a theme that resonates as much today as it did in Mussolini's Italy. As we move forward in our exploration of Mussolini's life and legacy, we carry with us the lessons of history and the hope that they guide us in our quest for a better future. Chapter 6. The Cult of Il Duce. In the heart of Italy, under the rule of Benito Mussolini, a remarkable transformation was underway. Mussolini was not just Italy's prime minister, he was becoming Il Duce, the leader, an almost mythical figure crafted by careful image building, public speeches, and state propaganda This chapter tells the story of how Mussolini's image became a central pillar of fascist Italy, shaping the nation and its people in profound ways. Mussolini understood the power of image. He knew that in order to solidify his control over Italy, he needed to be more than a political leader. He needed to be a symbol of strength, unity, and the promise of a revitalized Italy. The cult of Il Duce was born out of this understanding, a blend of personal charisma and carefully orchestrated propaganda designed to elevate Mussolini to an almost godlike status among Italians. The public image of Mussolini was everywhere. His face adorned posters and postcards. His speeches were broadcast on the radio and played in newsreels before movies. Statues and busts of Il Duce were erected in public squares, and streets and buildings were named after him. The message was clear. Mussolini was not just leading Italy. He was embodying the spirit of the nation itself. Mussolini's speeches were central to the cult that surrounded him. He was a master orator, capable of captivating and energizing crowds. His speeches were dramatic performances, delivered with intense emotion and physicality. Mussolini knew how to use his voice, his gestures, and his very presence to inspire his audience. He spoke of a grand vision for Italy, a future filled with glory and power, and presented himself as the only leader capable of realizing this vision. Propaganda was another powerful tool in the building of the cult of Il Duce. The fascist regime used all means of communication available at the time to spread its message. Newspapers, radio broadcasts, and films all glorified Mussolini and the fascist ideology. This propaganda portrayed Mussolini as a heroic figure, a man of the people who had risen to save Italy from chaos and lead it to greatness. The narrative was simple yet powerful. Mussolini was Italy, and Italy was Mussolini. The impact of this cult on Italian society was profound. For many Italians, Mussolini became a figure of almost divine significance. People believed in him, in his strength and his vision for Italy. They saw him as the architect of the nation's rebirth, the man who had brought stability and direction to a country that had been lost. This belief was not just political, it was emotional, a deep-seated faith in the man who had promised to restore Italy's pride and power. However, the cult of Il Duce was not without its critics. There were those in Italy who saw through the propaganda, who recognized the dangers of a society built around the worship of a single leader. These voices were often silenced, their warnings ignored or suppressed by the regime. The cult was a powerful force, one that permeated every aspect of Italian life, making opposition difficult and dangerous. The building of Mussolini's image was a strategic move, a way of linking the destiny of Italy to the persona of one man. It was a tactic that brought short-term gains, consolidating Mussolini's power and unifying the country under the banner of fascism. But it was also a strategy that tied the fate of fascist Italy to the fortunes of its leader. As long as Mussolini was strong, the regime was strong. But any weakness in Il Duce would be a weakness in fascist Italy itself. The cult of Il Duce is a chapter in Italy's history that highlights the power of propaganda and the dangers of personality cults. It shows how a leader can be transformed into a symbol, and how that symbol can come to dominate a nation's identity. Mussolini's image building was not just about glorifying one man. It was about shaping the collective consciousness of a nation, about forging a unity of purpose and belief under the banner of fascism. Yet, this story also serves as a cautionary tale. It reminds us of the importance of questioning and critical thinking, of the dangers of placing too much faith in any single leader. The cult of Il Duce was a powerful force in Italian society, but it was built on a foundation of propaganda and manipulation. Its legacy is a complex one, a testament to the power of image in the modern world, and a warning of the risks when that power is unchecked. As we reflect on the era of Mussolini and the cult of Il Duce, we are reminded of the enduring impact of leadership and propaganda on the course of history. It is a chapter that speaks to the heart of human nature, to our longing for heroes and our need for hope. In the end, the story of Mussolini's image building is not just about the past. It is about understanding the forces that shape our world today and the lessons we can learn from history as we navigate the challenges of the future. Chapter 7: Economic Endeavors. In the unfolding story of Mussolini's Italy, the transformation of the economy held a chapter all its own. Mussolini's vision extended beyond the political and cultural spheres. He aimed to revolutionize Italy's economy as well. His policies and initiatives, particularly the battle for wheat, were bold moves designed to make Italy self-sufficient and assert its independence on the global stage. This chapter delves into Mussolini's economic endeavors and their impact on Italy and its people. Mussolini took the helm of Italy at a time when the country's economy was struggling. The aftermath of World War I had left Italy's economy weakened, with high unemployment rates and widespread poverty. Mussolini, with his characteristic determination, set out to address these issues through a series of ambitious economic policies. One of the cornerstones of Mussolini's economic strategy was the battle for wheat. Launched in 1925, this campaign aimed to increase wheat production within Italy to reduce the need for imports. The logic was simple yet bold. By becoming self-sufficient in wheat, Italy would not only strengthen its economy, but also assert its independence from foreign suppliers. The battle for wheat saw the implementation of a variety of measures to boost wheat production. These included providing incentives for farmers to grow wheat, introducing new agricultural techniques, and reclaiming land for cultivation. Mussolini himself was often photographed in the fields, encouraging farmers and symbolizing his personal commitment to the campaign. The results of the battle for wheat were mixed. On the one hand, wheat production in Italy increased significantly, and for a time, Italy became self-sufficient in wheat. This was celebrated as a major victory for Mussolini's regime, a tangible example of its ability to achieve its goals and strengthen the nation. However, the focus on wheat production had unintended consequences. The emphasis on wheat meant that other crops were neglected, leading to a decrease in the diversity of food available to the Italian people. Additionally, the drive to increase production often came at the expense of the environment, with extensive land reclamation projects causing damage to Italy's natural landscapes. Beyond the battle for wheat, Mussolini's economic policies included efforts to modernize Italy's infrastructure. Roads, bridges, and railways were built or upgraded, facilitating movement and trade within the country. These projects provided jobs for many Italians, helping to reduce unemployment and stimulate economic activity. Mussolini also sought to control the economy more directly through the establishment of state-owned enterprises and the implementation of strict government controls over key sectors. This approach was part of Mussolini's broader goal of creating a corporatist state, where the economy and society would be organized into corporations representing different sectors and interests. While these initiatives had some success in modernizing Italy's economy and reducing unemployment, they also led to increased government control over the lives of the Italian people. The state's intervention in the economy was extensive, affecting everything from what crops farmers could grow to how businesses were run. This control extended into the daily lives of Italians, with the fascist regime dictating many aspects of how people worked and lived. The impact of Mussolini's economic endeavors on Italy and its people was complex. On one hand, his policies led to improvements in infrastructure and some degree of economic modernization. On the other hand, the focus on self-sufficiency and the extensive control exercised by the state had lasting negative effects on Italy's economy and its environment. The story of Mussolini's economic policies is a reflection of his broader vision for Italy, a vision of strength, independence, and modernity. However, it is also a tale of the limits of that vision and the consequences of seeking to control an economy and a society so tightly. Mussolini's economic endeavors changed Italy, but they also revealed the challenges of transforming a nation's economy through force of will and ideology alone. As we look back on this chapter of Mussolini's rule, we see a leader driven by a desire to remake Italy in his image. The battle for wheat and other economic policies were part of Mussolini's attempt to assert Italy's power and independence. Yet, they also serve as a reminder of the complexities of economic transformation and the impact of political decisions on the lives of ordinary people. Mussolini's economic endeavors, with their achievements and shortcomings, are an integral part of the story of fascist Italy. They illustrate the intersection of politics, economy, and ideology, and their effects on a nation and its citizens. In exploring this chapter of Mussolini's rule, we gain insights into the challenges of leadership and the delicate balance between ambition and reality in the pursuit of national renewal. Chapter 8: Ethiopia and Empire. In the unfolding saga of Mussolini's Italy, the ambition to build an empire took center stage. The year was 1935, and Mussolini's eyes turned towards Africa, specifically Ethiopia. This chapter of history is not just about the invasion of a country. It's about Mussolini's quest for power and the international reaction that followed. Ethiopia stood as one of the few independent African nations, a symbol of freedom on a continent largely carved up by European powers. For Mussolini, conquering Ethiopia was more than just territorial expansion. It was about asserting Italy's status as a global power and fulfilling the dream of a new Roman Empire. The preparation for the invasion was meticulous. Propaganda painted the campaign as a civilizing mission, a quest to bring progress to the African continent. But the reality was far different. The Italian army was equipped with modern weapons, including tanks and airplanes, while the Ethiopian forces, though brave, were largely armed with traditional weapons. In October 1935, the Italian troops crossed into Ethiopia. The invasion was swift and brutal. The Ethiopians fought valiantly to defend their homeland, but they were overwhelmed by the Italian military might. The use of chemical weapons by the Italian forces, a horrific tactic forbidden by international law, added a dark chapter to the conflict. By May 1936, the Italian forces had captured Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia, and Mussolini declared the country part of the Italian Empire. The announcement was met with jubilation in Italy. Mussolini had delivered on his promise of empire, and the Italian people basked in the glory of their victorious leader. However, the conquest of Ethiopia did not go unnoticed on the international stage. The League of Nations, an organization founded to promote peace and cooperation after World War I, condemned the invasion. Italy was subjected to economic sanctions, but they were largely ineffective. Many countries, fearing the rise of fascism and the prospect of another global conflict, were reluctant to enforce them. The invasion of Ethiopia marked a turning point in Mussolini's rule. It solidified his power within Italy, as the conquest was seen as a national triumph. Yet, it also isolated Italy on the world stage. The sanctions and international condemnation did little to deter Mussolini, but they foreshadowed the alliances that would form in the coming years, leading up to World War II. The Ethiopian campaign also had profound effects on the people of Ethiopia. The invasion brought suffering and devastation, disrupting a proud and ancient culture. The legacy of resistance against the Italian occupation remains a powerful aspect of Ethiopian national identity. For Mussolini, Ethiopia was a jewel in the crown of his new empire, a symbol of Italy's resurgence as a dominant power. But the conquest was also a reflection of the darker aspects of Mussolini's ambitions. The use of chemical weapons and the suppression of the Ethiopian people were stark reminders of the lengths to which Mussolini would go to achieve his vision. The story of Ethiopia and the empire is a dramatic chapter in the history of Mussolini's Italy. It is a tale of ambition and conquest, of resistance and resilience. It highlights the complexities of Mussolini's character and the impact of his policies, both within Italy and beyond. As we reflect on this period, we are reminded of the consequences of unchecked ambition and the importance of international cooperation and law. The invasion of Ethiopia is not just a historical event. It is a lesson on the dangers of imperialism and the enduring spirit of a people determined to defend their freedom. In the end, Mussolini's dream of empire would come at a great cost, not just to Ethiopia, but to Italy itself. The pursuit of empire would lead Italy into further conflicts and contribute to its eventual downfall in World War II. Yet, the story of Ethiopia and Mussolini's ambitions remains a poignant reminder of the complexities of history and the indomitable will of nations to maintain their sovereignty and dignity in the face of aggression. Chapter 9. Alliance with Hitler. As the 1930s unfolded, the political landscape of Europe was changing dramatically. Two figures stood at the center of this transformation: Benito Mussolini and Adolf Hitler. The relationship between Mussolini, Italy's fascist leader, and Hitler, Germany's Führer, was complex, evolving from mutual admiration to a binding alliance that would shape the course of history and lead to the outbreak of World War II. Initially, Mussolini viewed Hitler with a mixture of skepticism and interest. Hitler, on the other hand, had long admired Mussolini, seeing in him a pioneer of fascist ideology. The early years of their relationship were marked by cautious diplomacy, as both leaders sought to understand how they could benefit from each other's support. The turning point came in the mid-1930s. Europe was a continent on edge, with the memory of the First World War still fresh and the fear of another conflict looming large. In Germany, Hitler was rapidly expanding his military and making aggressive moves that threatened the balance of power. Mussolini, watching these developments, began to see an alliance with Germany as beneficial, perhaps even necessary, for maintaining Italy's position on the international stage. In 1936, the Rome-Berlin Axis was formed, a partnership that signaled a deepening of ties between Italy and Germany. This alliance was not just a military or political agreement, it was a statement of shared values and ambitions, a commitment to the spread of fascist and Nazi ideologies. The relationship between Mussolini and Hitler was characterized by a peculiar blend of competition and cooperation. Mussolini, with his seniority in the fascist movement, initially saw himself as the mentor to Hitler. However, as Germany's power grew, the dynamics shifted. Mussolini found himself increasingly in the shadow of Hitler, whose ambitions and military capabilities far outstripped those of Italy. Despite this, Mussolini was drawn into Hitler's orbit, supporting his moves on the European stage. When Hitler annexed Austria in 1938, Mussolini offered no resistance, recognizing that opposing Germany could isolate Italy. Similarly, when Hitler demanded the Sudetenland from Czechoslovakia, Mussolini played the role of mediator at the Munich Conference, helping to secure an agreement that furthered Hitler's goals. As World War II approached, the alliance between Italy and Germany grew stronger. Mussolini, emboldened by his partnership with Hitler, adopted increasingly aggressive foreign policies. In 1939, Italy invaded Albania, a move that mirrored Hitler's annexation of territories in Europe. Then, in 1940, as Hitler's armies swept through Western Europe, Mussolini declared war on Britain and France, fully aligning Italy with Germany's war effort. The alliance between Mussolini and Hitler, however, was fraught with challenges. Despite their shared ideologies, the two leaders had different visions for their countries and the future of Europe. Mussolini's Italy, with its weaker economy and military, struggled to keep pace with Germany's war machine. The Italian campaigns in Greece and North Africa were costly and largely unsuccessful, leading to German interventions to support their Italian ally. The relationship between Mussolini and Hitler, once marked by mutual admiration, became one of dependency. Mussolini relied on Hitler for support, both militarily and economically, as Italy's fortunes in the war waned. This dependence was a source of frustration for Mussolini, who had once envisioned himself as the leader of a powerful, independent Italy. As World War II progressed, the alliance between Italy and Germany had profound implications for both countries. For Italy, the partnership led to disaster, drawing the country deeper into a conflict that it was ill-prepared to fight. The Italian people suffered greatly, enduring bombings, shortages, and the horrors of war. For Germany, the alliance with Italy provided a strategic partner, but also a liability, as German resources were stretched thin supporting Italian campaigns. The alliance between Mussolini and Hitler is a chapter of history that highlights the dangers of unchecked ambition and the complexities of international relations. It serves as a reminder of how the decisions of leaders can lead nations into catastrophic conflicts, affecting millions of lives. In reflecting on this period, we see the importance of diplomacy, dialogue, and the pursuit of peace. The story of Mussolini and Hitler's partnership is not just about the past. It offers lessons for today and the future, reminding us of the need to work together to build a world where cooperation prevails over conflict, and where the ambitions of a few do not dictate the fate of many. Chapter 10. The War Years. The years of World War II were a tumultuous time for Italy, a period marked by battles, hardship, and profound transformations. Italy, under Mussolini's leadership, found itself engaged in conflicts across multiple fronts, its people bearing the weight of war's heavy toll. As Italy entered the war alongside Germany, the Italian military faced immense challenges. The campaigns in North Africa, Greece, and the Soviet Union tested the limits of Italian forces, revealing vulnerabilities in Italy's military capabilities and strategic planning. The battles were fierce, and the Italian soldiers, despite showing bravery, often found themselves in difficult situations due to inadequate supplies and support. In North Africa, the Italian troops initially made progress, but the tide of war quickly turned against them. The arrival of British reinforcements and the harsh desert conditions led to a series of defeats for Italy. The Battle of El Alamein, in particular, was a significant setback, marking a turning point in the North African campaign. The invasion of Greece, intended as a swift victory, turned into a prolonged and costly endeavor. The Greek resistance, stronger than anticipated, coupled with the challenging terrain and the onset of winter, stalled the Italian advance. The campaign in Greece strained Italy's military resources and highlighted the difficulties of waging war on multiple fronts. Meanwhile, on the Eastern Front, Italian troops sent to support Germany's invasion of the Soviet Union faced the brutal realities of warfare in harsh winter conditions. The vast distances, the cold, and the determined Soviet resistance made the campaign a harrowing experience for the Italian soldiers. Back in Italy, the war brought economic hardship and suffering to the civilian population. The needs of the war effort led to shortages of food, fuel, and other essentials. Bombings by Allied forces targeted Italian cities, causing destruction and loss of life. The Italian people, caught between the demands of the fascist regime and the realities of war, endured great hardships. As the war progressed, the initial support for Mussolini and the fascist regime began to wane. The military setbacks, the economic difficulties, and the growing awareness of the true nature of the fascist alliance with Nazi Germany led to disillusionment among the Italian populace. The resistance movement, part of a broader Allied effort against the Axis powers, gained strength, carrying out acts of sabotage and working to undermine fascist control. The turning point came in 1943. Following the Allied invasion of Sicily and the continued failures on the war front, Mussolini's grip on power weakened. In July 1943, he was deposed and arrested, signaling the end of fascist rule in Italy. However, the war was far from over for the Italian people. Italy was now divided, with the north still under the control of German forces and the fascist regime, while the south was liberated by the Allies. The liberation of Italy was a slow and painful process, marked by fierce battles and significant suffering. The Italian campaign, as it became known, was a crucial phase of World War II, with Allied and Axis forces fighting for control of the Italian peninsula. Towns and cities bore the scars of conflict, and the civilian population suffered both from the fighting and the repercussions of living under occupation. The war years were a period of profound change for Italy. The experience of conflict, the realities of fascist rule, and the process of liberation left lasting marks on the country and its people. The end of World War II saw Italy emerging as a republic, with the monarchy abolished and a new constitution in place. The Italian people, having endured the hardships of war and the disillusionment with fascist ideology, looked forward to rebuilding their country and creating a new future. The story of Italy during the war years is a testament to the resilience of its people. Faced with adversity, they showed strength and courage both on the battlefronts and on the home front. The war brought out the best and the worst of humanity, highlighting the capacity for bravery and sacrifice, but also the depths of suffering and loss. Reflecting on this period in Italy's history, we are reminded of the costs of war and the importance of peace. The experiences of the Italian soldiers and civilians during World War II serve as a powerful reminder of the need for understanding, compassion, and cooperation among nations. As we look back on those challenging years, we honor the memory of those who suffered and those who fought for a better world, drawing lessons from the past to guide us in the pursuit of a more peaceful and just future. Chapter 12: Captivity and Escape. In the heart of World War II's turmoil, a dramatic episode unfolded that seemed more like a tale from an adventurous novel than a chapter from history. This is the story of Benito Mussolini's capture, his brief period in captivity, and his extraordinary escape, a feat orchestrated by German forces that showcased both audacity and risk. Following his removal from power in July 1943, Mussolini found himself a prisoner, but not just any prisoner. He was a former leader, now held captive by his own countrymen, a symbol of a regime that was crumbling under the weight of war. Mussolini was moved secretly from one location to another, as his captors sought to keep him out of German hands. His final place of detention was a remote hotel in the mountains of Abruzzo, a seemingly impenetrable fortress named Campo Imperatore. The location was chosen for its isolation and the natural protection offered by the surrounding mountains. It seemed impossible for anyone, friend or foe, to stage a rescue. Mussolini, once the unchallenged ruler of Italy, found himself alone and powerless, his future uncertain. However, Mussolini's fate was about to change. Adolf Hitler, upon learning of Mussolini's ousting and capture, was determined to rescue him. Hitler believed that Mussolini was still a valuable ally, and that his presence could bolster the fascist cause in Italy. The task of planning and executing Mussolini's rescue was assigned to Otto Skorzeny, a daring commando known for his bold operations. The rescue mission, codenamed Operation Eiche, Operation Oak, was fraught with challenges. The first was locating Mussolini, who had been moved multiple times to keep his whereabouts a secret. German intelligence efforts finally pinpointed his location at Campo Imperatore. The next challenge was the rescue itself. The hotel was situated atop a high plateau, accessible only by a steep and winding road or by air. The rugged terrain made a traditional rescue operation seem impossible. Skorzeny, known for his ingenuity, decided on a bold plan. He would use a small team of commandos and a fleet of gliders to land directly on the plateau near the hotel. The element of surprise would be their main advantage. On the day of the rescue, the skies above Campo Imperatore were filled with the unexpected sight of gliders silently descending. The Italian guards, taken by surprise and overwhelmed by the audaciousness of the operation, were unable to mount an effective resistance. Skorzeny and his commandos quickly secured the hotel and found Mussolini. The former Italian leader was astonished by the daring rescue. Skorzeny greeted him, saying, "Duce, the Führer has sent me to set you free." Mussolini, realizing his unexpected turn of fortune, could only express his gratitude. He was swiftly escorted to a small Fiesler Storch aircraft, specially chosen for its ability to take off from the short plateau. With Mussolini on board, the plane made a precarious but successful takeoff, flying him to safety and a meeting with Hitler. Mussolini's rescue was a propaganda triumph for the Germans. It was hailed as a daring and dramatic operation, a testament to German ingenuity and commitment to their allies. For Mussolini, it was a moment of liberation, albeit into a situation far different from his previous rule. He was installed as the head of the Italian Social Republic, a puppet state controlled by Nazi Germany, in the north of Italy. Though he was free from captivity, his power was now severely limited and his health and spirits were in decline. The story of Mussolini's captivity and escape is a vivid chapter in the history of World War II. It highlights the complexities of alliances and the lengths to which leaders would go to support their allies. For Mussolini, the rescue brought a brief respite from defeat and humiliation. But it also marked the beginning of his final chapter, a period characterized by increasing isolation and the looming shadow of defeat. Reflecting on this dramatic episode, we are reminded of the unpredictability of history and the extraordinary lengths to which individuals and nations will go in times of war. Mussolini's brief period of captivity and his subsequent escape serve as a testament to the complexities of human ambition, the bonds of loyalty, and the enduring quest for power and freedom, even in the most desperate of circumstances. Chapter 13. The Italian Social Republic. After a daring escape and rescue, Mussolini found himself in a dramatically different Italy. The north was under German control, while the south had been liberated by Allied forces. It was in this divided country that Mussolini was installed as the head of a new regime, the Italian Social Republic, often known as the Republic of Salo, after the town where its government was based. This chapter of history reveals the struggle to maintain control in a country torn by war and the efforts to establish a new state amidst ongoing conflict. The Italian Social Republic was born out of necessity for the Germans, who needed to keep a foothold in Italy, and for Mussolini, who sought to regain his lost power. However, this new state was far from the grand vision Mussolini once had for Italy. It was, in essence, a puppet state, heavily reliant on Nazi Germany for military and economic support. Despite this, Mussolini attempted to reassert his influence, implementing policies and promoting the fascist ideology he had championed for decades. Mussolini's new government faced immediate challenges. The Italian Social Republic was not recognized by the majority of the Italian population or the international community. Inside its territory, partisans, members of the resistance movement fighting against Mussolini and his German allies, carried out acts of sabotage and guerrilla warfare. The conflict within Italy was brutal, marked by violence on both sides, as the partisans sought to undermine the Salo regime and prepare for the liberation of the north. Despite these challenges, Mussolini pressed on with his policies. He attempted to reinvigorate the fascist agenda, focusing on social reforms and continuing his rhetoric against perceived enemies. However, the reality of the situation limited what could be achieved. The economy of the Italian Social Republic was in shambles, crippled by war and the Allied blockade. Resources were scarce, and the German military requisitioned much of what was available for their own use. The governance of the Italian Social Republic also reflected the desperate circumstances. Mussolini's government was made up of loyal fascists, many of whom had followed him since the early days of his rule. However, the effectiveness of this government was hampered by internal divisions, the constant threat of partisan attacks, and the overarching control of Nazi Germany. Mussolini himself was a changed man. His health was failing, and his once unquestioned authority was now undermined by his dependency on Hitler. The Italian Social Republic attempted to maintain a semblance of normalcy amid the chaos of war. Propaganda efforts continued, with Mussolini's regime trying to rally the Italian people to the fascist cause and the defense of the North against the advancing Allies. However, these efforts were largely unsuccessful. The Italian populace was war-weary and disillusioned with fascism, which they blamed for leading the country into disaster. As the Allies pushed northward, liberating Italy piece by piece, the territory controlled by the Italian Social Republic shrank. The end was approaching for Mussolini's regime. The partisans intensified their activities, and defections from the fascist cause increased as it became clear that the Allies would emerge victorious. The Italian Social Republic's brief existence came to an end in April 1945, as Allied forces and the partisans liberated the last areas under its control. Mussolini attempted to flee to Switzerland, but was captured by partisans. His capture marked the definitive end of the Italian Social Republic and Mussolini's rule. The story of the Italian Social Republic is a tale of ambition thwarted by reality, of a leader trying to reclaim lost glory in the midst of a country torn by war. It highlights the resilience of the Italian people who endured years of conflict and occupation, and the determination of the resistance movement to free their country from fascism and foreign domination. Reflecting on this chapter of history, we are reminded of the consequences of totalitarianism and the importance of unity and resistance in the face of oppression. The Italian Social Republic serves as a lesson on the dangers of ideology when it is detached from the needs and well-being of the people. In the end, the efforts to establish a fascist state in the north were undone by the enduring spirit of the Italian people and their desire for freedom, peace, and a return to democratic governance. Chapter 14. The Final Stand. As the final chapter of World War II unfolded in Italy, the last months of Mussolini's rule were marked by desperation and chaos. The once powerful leader found himself cornered by advancing Allied forces, resistance fighters gaining ground, and a population weary of war and disillusionment with fascism. This period was Mussolini's final stand, a desperate attempt to cling to power in the face of inevitable defeat. The Italian Social Republic, Mussolini's last attempt at maintaining a fascist regime, was crumbling. The Allied forces were pushing north, liberating towns and cities one by one. The resistance movement within Italy, comprised of partisans committed to fighting fascism and German occupation, intensified their efforts, attacking supply lines and gathering intelligence for the Allies. Mussolini's health and spirit were in decline. Gone was the confident leader who had once promised to restore Italy to greatness. Instead, he was a man grasping at the remnants of his power, increasingly isolated and aware of the grim fate that awaited him. In the early months of 1945, as the Allies continued their advance, Mussolini attempted to negotiate a way out. He reached out to the Allies, hoping to secure a deal that would allow him to escape retribution. However, his offers were rejected. The Allies, and indeed the Italian population, wanted nothing less than an unconditional surrender and the end of fascist rule in Italy. As the noose tightened, Mussolini made a last-ditch effort to flee. With his mistress, Clara Petacci, and a small entourage of loyalists, he attempted to cross into Switzerland. The plan was fraught with risk and desperation. The roads were fraught with danger, patrolled by partisans and Allied soldiers. Mussolini's convoy was forced to take circuitous routes, moving mostly under the cover of darkness to avoid detection. However, Mussolini's luck had run out. On April 27, 1945, the convoy was stopped by partisans near the village of Dongo on Lake Como. Mussolini was recognized and captured, bringing an end to his flight and effectively sealing his fate. The capture of Mussolini was a significant moment, not just for Italy, but for the world. It marked the definitive end of fascist rule in Italy and the collapse of the Axis powers in Europe. Mussolini's subsequent execution by the partisans was swift, a stark end to a leader who had once held Italy in his grasp. The impact of Mussolini's final stand and his eventual capture and execution was profound. It symbolized the victory of the resistance movement and the Allied forces, and the liberation of Italy from fascism. The Italian people, who had endured years of dictatorship, war, and occupation, could finally look forward to rebuilding their country and restoring democracy. The last months of Mussolini's rule were a dramatic conclusion to a tumultuous era in Italy's history. They were a time of conflict and upheaval, but also of hope and liberation. The end of fascism in Italy paved the way for a new beginning, for a nation determined to rebuild and move forward from the scars of war. Reflecting on this period, we are reminded of the resilience of the human spirit and the desire for freedom and justice. Mussolini's final stand and his eventual downfall serve as a cautionary tale about the dangers of authoritarianism and the power of collective resistance. As we remember the last months of Mussolini's rule, we honor the courage of the partisans and the sacrifice of all those who fought for freedom in Italy. Their struggle and triumph remind us of the importance of defending democratic values and the rights of individuals against the forces of oppression and tyranny. In the end, Mussolini's final stand was not just the end of a dictator's rule, it was a testament to the enduring strength of the human desire for liberty and peace. Chapter 15: The End of an Era. The closing chapter of Benito Mussolini's life and the fascist regime in Italy is both dramatic and somber. It marks not just the end of a man's life, but also the conclusion of a dark period in Italian history. This story, while fraught with the complexities of war and political strife, ultimately leads to a nation's moment of liberation and reflection. In the spring of 1945, as World War II neared its end in Europe, Mussolini's attempt to escape the inevitable collapse of his regime led to his capture. Along with his companion, Clara Petacci, and a few loyal followers, Mussolini sought refuge and a passage to safety. However, their flight was cut short near Lake Como in the north of Italy. Partisans, members of the Italian resistance movement fighting against fascism and German occupation, apprehended them. The capture of Mussolini was a significant moment, symbolizing the fall of fascism in Italy. The decision was made swiftly by the partisans to execute Mussolini and his associates, a direct response to the years of tyranny, oppression, and war. On April 28, 1945, Mussolini and Petacci were shot. The following day, their bodies, along with those of other executed fascists, were displayed in Milan's Piazzale Loreto, a stark and grim testament to the end of an era. The display of Mussolini's body was more than an act of retribution. It was a symbol of Italy's liberation from fascism. It served as a stark reminder of the cost of dictatorship and the long, painful journey towards freedom. For many Italians, the end of Mussolini's rule brought a mix of emotions: relief, sorrow for the lives lost, and hope for the future. The end of fascist rule in Italy marked the beginning of a new chapter. The country faced the monumental task of rebuilding after years of war and fascist governance. There was a collective desire to move forward, to establish a democratic society based on freedom, justice, and equality. The Italian people, having endured the hardships of Mussolini's regime and the war, were eager to lay the foundations for a peaceful and prosperous future. Reflecting on Mussolini's legacy, it's clear that the fascist era left deep scars on Italy and the world. The aggressive pursuit of power, the suppression of freedom, and the devastating consequences of war are stark reminders of the dangers of totalitarianism. Yet, the end of Mussolini's rule also demonstrates the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring desire for liberty and democracy. The story of Mussolini's capture and execution, and the subsequent reflection on the fascist period, is a poignant reminder of the cost of dictatorship. It underscores the importance of vigilance in preserving democratic values and the need for collective action to oppose tyranny and oppression. Mussolini's end and the fall of fascist Italy offer lessons on the fragility of freedom and the responsibility of each generation to uphold the principles of democracy and human rights. As we look back on this chapter of history, we are reminded of the sacrifices made by countless individuals who fought for a better future. The partisans who risked everything to resist fascism, the soldiers who battled on the fronts, and the civilians who endured the hardships of war and occupation are all part of the story of Italy's liberation. The end of Mussolini's era is not just a historical event. It is a testament to the strength of collective will and the pursuit of a just society. It serves as a reminder that, even in the darkest times, there is hope for renewal and change. As Italy rebuilt in the years following the war, it did so with the determination to create a nation rooted in the values of democracy, peace, and human dignity. The legacy of Mussolini and the fascist period continues to be a subject of reflection and study. It serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of maintaining a vigilant and active defense of democratic principles. The end of an era, marked by Mussolini's capture and execution, is a chapter of history that offers enduring lessons for the world, reminding us of the value of freedom and the ongoing struggle to preserve and protect it for future generations. Chapter 16. Reflections on Power. As the dust settled on the tumultuous period of Mussolini's rule and World War II, Italy, and indeed the world, began a process of reflection. This chapter delves into the leadership style of Mussolini, his impact on Italy and the broader world, and the lessons that can be drawn from this significant historical era. Mussolini's leadership style was characterized by a mix of charisma, authoritarianism, and a relentless pursuit of power. His ability to connect with people through stirring speeches and bold promises played a key role in his rise. However, his rule also highlighted the dangers of concentrating too much power in the hands of a single individual. Under Mussolini, freedoms were curtailed, dissent was suppressed, and the fascist regime attempted to control every aspect of Italian life. The impact of Mussolini's leadership on Italy was profound and multifaceted. Initially, many Italians were drawn to Mussolini for his promises of stability, national glory, and the restoration of Italy's standing in the world. However, as time passed, the costs of his policies became increasingly apparent. Italy's involvement in World War II under Mussolini's direction brought devastation to the country, including economic hardship, loss of life, and widespread destruction. On the world stage, Mussolini's actions and alliance with Nazi Germany played a significant role in shaping the events leading up to and during World War II. His expansionist ambitions and aggressive foreign policies contributed to the tensions that erupted into a global conflict, affecting millions of lives across continents. The lessons learned from Mussolini's rule are numerous and enduring. One of the key takeaways is the importance of safeguarding democratic institutions and processes. Mussolini's rise to power underscored the fragility of democracy and the need for vigilance in protecting it from authoritarian threats. Additionally, the consequences of militarism and aggressive nationalism highlighted by Mussolini's tenure serve as a cautionary tale about the dangers of pursuing glory and expansion at the expense of peace and stability. Another lesson is the value of critical thinking and dissent in a healthy society. Under Mussolini, the suppression of opposing viewpoints and the control of information compromised the ability of the Italian people to make informed decisions and resist the encroachments of dictatorship. This experience underscores the importance of fostering a culture of open dialogue, where different perspectives are heard and respected. Mussolini's leadership also prompts reflection on the nature of power and its impact on leaders and their constituents. Mussolini's initial popularity and the eventual downfall illustrate the transient nature of power and the responsibility that comes with it. Leaders have the capacity to shape the destiny of nations, for better or worse, making it imperative that they wield power with wisdom, humility, and a deep commitment to the welfare of their people. Reflecting on Mussolini's rule and its aftermath offers valuable insights into the dynamics of leadership, the complexities of governance, and the eternal struggle for justice and liberty. It serves as a reminder of humanity's capacity for both greatness and folly, and the continuous need for vigilance, compassion, and wisdom in guiding the affairs of nations. As we look back on this chapter of history, we are invited to learn from the past and apply those lessons to the challenges of the present and future. Mussolini's story, with its mix of ambition, error, and consequence, provides fertile ground for reflection on the qualities of effective, ethical leadership and the foundations of a just and peaceful society. Chapter 17: Echoes Through History. The story of Benito Mussolini and his era of rule has left indelible marks on the canvas of history, resonating through the decades into the heart of modern Italy and the wider world. This chapter explores the echoes of Mussolini's reign, how it is remembered today, its lasting impact, and the vital lessons it imparts about the dangers of authoritarianism. Mussolini's rule, characterized by its initial promise of revival and subsequent descent into tyranny and war, serves as a powerful reminder of the complexities of leadership and governance. Today, Mussolini is remembered with a mix of reflection and caution, serving as a symbol of how aspirations for greatness can lead to devastating consequences when unchecked by democratic principles and respect for human rights. In modern Italy, the legacy of Mussolini and fascism is met with a nuanced understanding. While the era is marked by significant infrastructural developments and attempts at modernization, it is also marred by the repression of freedoms, aggressive militarism, and the tragic involvement in World War II. Italian society today reflects on this period with a commitment to remembering the lessons of the past. Memorials, museums, and educational programs dedicated to the victims of fascism and the resistance movement highlight the importance of memory and vigilance in preserving democratic values. The impact of Mussolini's rule extends beyond Italy's borders, contributing to global dialogues on the nature of power, leadership, and the fragility of democracies. The rise of Mussolini, paralleled by the rise of other authoritarian leaders, has become a focal point of study for understanding the conditions that enable such figures to gain power. His alliance with Hitler and the role of Italy in World War II are studied as critical elements in the complex mosaic of 20th century history, offering insights into the dynamics of international relations and conflict. Reflections on the dangers of authoritarianism, inspired by Mussolini's rule, resonate strongly in contemporary discussions about governance and society. The allure of charismatic leaders promising quick fixes to complex problems, the erosion of democratic institutions in the face of consolidating power, and the suppression of dissent are all echoes of Mussolini's era that continue to be relevant. These reflections serve as a cautionary tale, reminding us of the need to support transparency, accountability, and inclusivity in governance. Mussolini's rule also prompts a deeper examination of the human capacity for both allegiance and resistance. The fervor with which many embraced fascism, driven by a desire for stability and national pride, contrasts starkly with the courage of those who resisted tyranny, often at great personal risk. This duality underscores the complexity of human societies and the perpetual struggle between the forces of oppression and the spirit of freedom. Today, as the world navigates new challenges and the resurgence of nationalist and authoritarian sentiments in various regions, the lessons from Mussolini's era are more pertinent than ever. They remind us of the importance of safeguarding democratic processes, encouraging civic engagement, and fostering a culture of critical inquiry and open dialogue. The echoes of Mussolini's rule through history invite us to reflect on the past with honesty and courage, to learn from it, and to apply those lessons to the present and future. By remembering the mistakes and achievements of the past, societies can strive to create a world where power is exercised with responsibility and respect for the dignity and rights of all individuals. In conclusion, the story of Mussolini and the fascist period in Italy serves not only as a historical account, but as a living dialogue with the present and future. It is a narrative that speaks to the enduring values of democracy, the importance of memory and remembrance, and the collective responsibility to prevent the repetition of past errors. As we look back on Mussolini's rule and its aftermath, we are reminded of the resilience of the human spirit and the ongoing pursuit of a more just, peaceful, and democratic world.